Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone Masters Tour here in Seoul. We have just completed the first three initial matches of the top 8, and now we are rolling into the very last match of the day, which will be between UNID and DeadDraw. For this last match, I will be casting with Mr. Derek Brown. How are you doing? It's been a long day.
It has been a long day. I'm excited to get down to it, though. I don't think I've seen DeadDraw once on stream so far, and I'm going to be pretty upfront about this. I'm a little bit biased in this one. As a UK Hearthstone player, it's not often that one of my countrymen does well. We're not particularly famed for our Hearthstone ability outside of ball control in Grandmasters, so I'm very much hoping for a win here for DeadDraw.
I mean, I've seen you trying to get in with the French scene because they seem to be a bit more bumping than it is in the UK, but you did bring up a good point. I said we have one Filipino player and one UK player in the top 8. How many Americans, though? Kibler and Frodan? What are you doing?
Yeah.
But yes, it will be a warrior versus rogue matchup. And in the top 8, UNID is the sole rogue remaining in the tournament. And we did say that rogue probably was well positioned to make it somewhere in the top 8 because of just how much mage there was. But now it's running into this problem of maybe all of the mage killers are getting gate kept by the warriors.
Yeah, that's right. Which is kind of what I was thinking would happen at the start, with the field being pretty much 50% mages coming into it.
That's an exaggeration. It's really a bit more like 40%.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I said pretty much 50. It's pretty much 50, right?
Fine.
But yeah, a lot of the other aggro decks, like there was a few aggro shamans, zoos, quest druid can be somewhat aggro-y as well. But a lot of the warriors can just push those down, which is really unfortunate for UNID because he is up against the one control warrior in the top 8. We have a Magaho on the bomb control fusion kind of thing.
Right.
DeadDraw, so far as I can remember, is just very much in on the full control strategy, which is going to do perfectly against this aggro rogue from UNID.
Right, and we see here what has transpired throughout the second half of the day. So we did see that the left half of players has been dominant. Left column really dunking on the right column. Their RNG list of China taking a win over Suni with his Reno Hunter. Suni, the sole remaining priest, still has a chance though tomorrow to make it through in the bottom half of the group brackets. Same with Staz and Zim, who fell to Magoho and Felkine respectively. The mages, they're facing off against each other, and maybe that means that they're filtering themselves out.
Yeah, well, that's with the mage players and also with the French players, because again, if you missed it, 4 of the 8 players that we have remaining in Masters Tour Seoul are French. So it's the lone non-French European representative that you're seeing on screen now, Mr. Jack Bancroft, aka DeadDraw. A nice British name there.
Yes. What do you think he's referring to with the burnout on his shirt?
I don't know.
Is he tired?
Yeah, I guess that's probably not actually like good mental attitude to have going into it. I mean, if it's working right, I might get a jumper that says rubbish at Hearthstone and see if that does me any favors.
And we can see that DeadDraw is rocking a more traditional control warrior with none of the bomb package in the primary, at least, although he sides it in the tertiary, which could be pretty useful, not against Rogue, but in other matchups.
I like this deck a lot that he's got rolling here. There's a couple of the new inclusions, mainly in the Taunt package that came in Saviors of Uldum. Frightened Flunky, the Armegadillo, and Tomb Warden as well. I think are really, really strong. And one of the things that people underestimate, in my opinion, about the Tomb Warden is that if you just get one hit from Armegadillo, it's insane. Like, it's absolutely bonkers. And even without that, against an aggro deck like Rogue, it's already potentially game-winning.
Just the taunt text on it makes the innkeeper tell you that you must attack the minion with taunt. And rogues don't want to see that. But this is a very streamlined aggro rogue list for UNID. I love seeing 2-ofs. I'm going to say it right here. I'm not a big fan of the Reno mechanic as a whole. And now I like to see that everything that isn't a legendary is doubled up, including fairy dragons, which really goes to show you that UNID was hoping to hit more of the mages and got there. And that's why he's here in the top 8.
That's right. The other signature inclusion, which you may have seen there, being the History buff, a card that was touted by some of the players as being really, really strong heading into this meta. And I think the general conclusion amongst a lot of the predictions for how it would shape up was that it was more of an arena card than a strong constructed card. But I saw that Hypno as well, a player who top-8'd at Vegas, was also a big fan and put that in his rogue deck, but to a somewhat less success than UNID.
I mean, it's just, we live in a a world where a few years ago, Spider Tank, everybody was excited about a 3-mana 3/4, and now we have things like History Buff, we have Spellward Jeweler, and I'm sure there are a bunch more 3/4s with an upside that I can't think of right now.
I mean, if I could go back to the Dark Cultists and the Cabal Talon Priest,
Ooh.
I'd take those 3/4s. That's what I'm after.
There's really certain metas where Priest gets the power spike cards, right? This is one of those metas, I think.
I know. Well, it kind of has to. Like, it feels like every 4 expansions, every 4 or 5 expansions, they just get the most giga nutty cards ever because all their others are just so bad.
And DeadDraw with a very solid 1-into-2 curve, already thinking about whether he should take Armagadillo or something that he can play earlier on. And I think the Proud Defender is a very disciplined choice here, realizing that he has the Tomb Warden, which synergizes very well with Armagadillo, obviously, but I think he just wants to make sure that he can play stuff instead of just armoring up.
A very disciplined man is DeadDraw. He hasn't had all too much success in terms of tournaments, I would say. Only recently qualifying to playoffs with last year's system for the first time. But he's just been a ladder god, I think, for quite a while now. He was able to hold fairly recently #1 #1 legend on 2 servers at once, NA and EU, with Nomi Priest when people had already disappeared from playing that deck entirely. It was quite impressive.
Very impressive indeed. And we did see the power of Right and Flunky just giving Warriors not only something to do on turn 2, but just having that additional upside of there only being 2 class taunts for Warrior, Flunky and Armagadillo, which are both insanely high power level cards by themselves. And we saw that Warriors these days are not running Weapons Project. One, because rogues aren't that prevalent to begin with, but having that thing to do on turn 2 contests things like Fairy Dragons, things like Sorcerer's Apprentice on curve. So Flunky, I think, is just low-key one of the best in the set.
I fully agree. I mean, every time it's played against me later on, it just feels like a Ghostlight Angler with Taunt, because it just discovers itself over and over and over again.
Does, yeah.
It's so annoying. Which is not even that unlucky. Like, it has a pretty good chance to find itself again.
So DeadDraw here can just play a Restless Mummy to deal with the Blink Fox and leave himself with a 3/1. The stat line isn't great into a class like Rogue, which can simply dagger it away.
Yes.
So there's also the argument for Proud Defender, although without the buff on it, it's not able to one-shot a Blink Fox.
Yeah.
So I like just removing this.
I agree, and I think that the breakpoints in terms of mana make the 1 health not as bad as it usually would be, because if Unid wants to dagger here, is he going to go like dagger into 2-drop? There aren't really many of them. Coin Miscreant is not even that bad for DeadDraw to see in terms of the immediate tempo of the play.
So going for the Waggle pick here. He hovered over Vendetta though, which was an interesting choice, I suppose, because he could have gone for something like Vendetta, Coin, Dagger, Miscreant, but it does seem like a subpar use of the coin. For the Rogue, I don't think taking another 3 damage is any problem for them.
Yeah, I like this from Unid. I think setting up the Waggle pick means that he has a good chance of, on this turn, being able to bounce the Miscreant, especially as now we could see Backstab, Vendetta, Miscreant swing, play it again. There's a lot of value that can be made here.
A lot of upside. And he's going to need these lackeys to try and outlast the taunts from DeadDraw. He's already got Armagadillo, Tomb Warden, and Zilliax in hand. That's the whole package that you want to buff with Armagadillo.
Unid, however, here taking a little bit of a deviation from the route we were expecting of a more proactive style of play to use up the Warpod, which I actually, upon a second look, think is quite smart because the rest of his hand will be good next turn. It's still going to be good, so why not use the Warpod in the one situation where it will be good?
Very good point. So now Backstab Miscreant available to start the turn, and Unid can go from there depending on what lackeys he gets. There's also, with the draw of this Hench Clan Burglar, an option to reactivate Vendetta. However, that does make the rest of his mana a little bit awkward, so I am leaning towards a Miscreant plan here.
DeadDraw has to be feeling somewhat safe, I think, as it currently stands with, well, there are only, 5 cards in hand at the start, and one of them he knew was the coin, so Tomb Warden was likely, I think, a lot of the time to put Unid in a pretty rough spot.
And those 2 of the initial lackeys were not what Unid wanted to see. He wanted Development or Ethereal Lackey, I think, in particular. Wow.
Whoa.
That's... That's gotta be worse for the Rogue than it is for the Warrior, right?
Like, Brawl and Plague are they're not completely useless because there's a good chance that DeadDraw swings ahead and it can be used against the Tomb Wardens. But I mean, the main thing just being it's literally a 0 attack minion. That's no development at all for DeadDraw.
Yeah, the spells that Warrior wants to use are generally mass removal, and the Rogue is not really responding to boards, so those would be dead cards in Uni's hand, whereas the Rogue wants to be playing either spells that cycle through the deck a bit more, or deal damage at some point, and the Warrior can use those damage-dealing spells to deal with the Rogue board.
This is now just a weird old situation, though, for DeadDraw, because he doesn't want to play any of the cards in his hand, and he doesn't have to, right? Like, he could just Hero Power Pass on this turn, set up for Brawl if there's a big development, or Tomb Warden if not.
Unid was only threatening a whopping 3 damage that turn. Leon Hands. That, I feel like, has to be the pick, but at some point he's going to need to find a way to get rid of this Cho.
Yeah, Psych Melon doesn't draw anything.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I guess Lay on Hands. I mean, given that he's at quite a low health total already as it stands, like given that it's not Bomb Warrior, it's unlikely that there is that much damage going to be pushed through. But if you're attacking into stuff with weapons all the time, 8 health can be a nice difference maker.
So now this is a board that looks like it's relatively threatening. Wow, Warpath. You can give the Rogue another Warpath. Why not?
We could give the Rogue 4 Warpaths.
We can
if
overdraw the Rogue.
Overdraw the Rogue.
I love it. We simply must, Dark. I mean, I actually think it's genuinely good.
Shall we?
Yes, we shall. Because we just mentioned that AoE in the hands of the Rogue is far less valuable than it is in the hands of the Warrior. There's the additional upside of overdrawing something from the Rogue's hand.
Yeah.
You clear the damage, and you make it so that the Rogue has to spend turns getting rid of the Warpath if they want to make room for this Lay on Hands.
It's really dumb, but I'm being convinced. I'm still coming around to your point of view.
All right.
DeadDraw in the end decided
Fine.
the 4 Warpaths that may have some kind of an application.
Cho is living here every single time. No.
Not this time, Cho. Back you go.
So. Well, now Unid doesn't have to worry about giving his opponent a Lay on Hands, but that's not the play for this turn, as there is not quite enough hand space just yet.
Yeah, I think he just dumps everything else onto the board now.
The little guys.
Yeah, I mean, he like it depends whether he wants to go for perfect mana utilization. I'd probably like to see him save the coin. Like after going for Lay on Hands, I think it could be a much better application than just coining out Lackey.
One thing that is a bit of a relief for the Rogue is that these days Warriors aren't including Harrison in the list anymore either, because Rogue fell off so much, so Rogue is free to stack up weapons as high as they want and not feel pressured to expend the charges immediately.
Worth pointing out as well for DeadDraw that this is a bit of a surprise to me, at least, that he went with the Control Warrior, as he is known absolutely most primarily as a combo player. He loves all these weird little combo decks, like Nomi Priest in particular. He was a big fan of the combo Priest. Hakar Druid was another one of his big decks that he was playing back in the day. I actually, one season, I gate kept him from rank 1 up against his Hakar Druid.
What did you play? Like exactly Bomb Warrior to try?
I was playing Rogue, the Pirate Rogue back then.
All right, so this is a very great wall that Unid needs to surpass. I believe the turn still starts with Lay on Hands, but there is an option for Brawl, honestly.
Yes.
Is it, honestly, is the Brawl getting better is what that's my question.
So 1/3 of the time, or 2/3 of the time, sorry, you're very happy.
Yeah, you just remove 2 5/8s at the cost of around 5 damage is the average outcome.
I think because he's got like Vendetta
deal.
and a buffed up weapon, he can probably afford to just go through it manually and not take the risk of just being in a miserable position.
True.
And he doesn't even have to do that right now, I suppose, either.
This is setting up for a better Brawl, Derek. That's just what it is. But obviously, DeadDraw knows that the Brawl is in
exactly.
hand.
He's
given
baiting
it.
his opponent into overcommitting. into the
Yes,
brawl.
the rogue has morphed into the warrior now. So Samli, definitely the right way to go about starting. Another Tomb Warden and another
Wow,
Omega
wow, wow.
Devastator.
That was a premium outcome off the assembly.
Indeed. Especially since this pinata has another Cho in it.
You're a sick person, Gia.
So just Tomb Warden. What kind of walks into Brawl? Although DeadDraw has been hovering over it. I wonder if...
I would be quite surprised
Yeah.
to see that come down now.
I wouldn't mind just maybe playing the pinata and then chucking the rest of this face. I don't think these taunts are worth trading. Wow, okay.
Dude. I guess he's saying that if the brawl comes down, he's in like half the time one of his guys survives anyway, right? And then he's in a
Right.
good enough position to keep dominating the board.
I'm not a fan though.
I
I'll
am
be
a little
honest.
bit surprised
Yeah.
to see this. I think this is a bit of an overcommittal. Like his other plays were perfectly fine.
Well, anyway, this is the good outcome for
Okay.
DeadDraw. But still, can deal with this at the cost of a full Vendetta because he had to use the Brawl to get to this position.
Yeah.
So maybe Vendetta stays in the hand and he instead uses Lackey and Deckhand instead. He can even coin out a big boy Edwin. Probably still dies to Devastator.
It's
though.
big indeed, but yeah, I think it, what is it, 12-12 actually, with the 5 cards played before.
Ah, okay, right.
It actually doesn't die
Cool.
to the Devastator, which is quite a big deal.
The perfect range.
Uh,
However, Warpath Devastator.
I mean, yeah, Warpath Devastator, or Warpath Plague of Wrath, if he thinks that's a difficult to expend card. Although having the 4/5 in play is not that useful comparative to how it could be because of the 5 attack weapon.
Well, counterpoint, the rogue is at 12. I want a minion on board.
Okay, good point. Yeah, good point. Yeah, this makes sense to me then. Yeah, I was tempted if while he's behind on board, it was worth going for the plague, but this also sets up, as you pointed out, for damage to face, and also Ziliax coming down at some point for just more damage.
We may have been just nitpicking over the usage of Brawl just because the discrepancy in resources was big enough that DeadDraw really did not mind a Brawl being played, but...
All right, are you ready for the synergy here?
all right.
History buff and Snip Snap to buff your Leroy.
I just like the fact that
Guess you'd
the
rather get
card
more
is called History Buff and it has a buff effect.
Yes.
That really helps. It's just like how the Power of the Wild option to summon a Panther is called Summon a Panther. It really helps casters remembering names like that.
Also because he's swole as heck, which I enjoy watching.
Mm-hmm.
Just ask Dan.
What other card did we call Swole the other day? I think it was Tiamat.
He buff.
Mm. And guess what? You need is history.
Nice. You need to stop doing those terrible jokes, or I will be dead. Draw. Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft.
So, DeadDraw probably thinking about what Unid's very best draw is from here on out, and probably Myra's Unstable Element. So he's thinking, can I be even greedier with this Omega Devastator? Do I even need to be? What's the best thing he can get off Myra's?
Yep.
At this point, not much, because the Edwin has been expended. So from Uni's perspective, probably the best thing he could get is just more burst. However, there's 36 health on DeadDraw's side of the board, so any amount of natural burst from the Rogue Death, I think, will not even be enough to get there.
I like this play coming in from DeadDraw as well. The expenditure of double Shield Slam may seem a little bit of an overcommittal onto the board, but I think setting up for potential lethal is very smart,
Right.
especially as he still has big tempo swings in his favor, obviously in the form of primarily Devastator, but also Ziliax just to push for the win next turn.
And there's the Myras.
Yep.
So just needs to think whether he dumps one more card so he gets one more draw.
I think
But,
getting the
yeah.
extra tempo might be more valuable, because
Right.
if he finds a way to generate a random warrior card, then he'll be able to get in the free Vendetta, which is pretty big.
So how buff can this Leroy get off of the history buffs?
So we could go buff into buff.
Into Miscreant, into Lackey Lackey.
That's pretty buff.
It's about a quarter Frodan.
That's not even 1% of Frodan's power.
That is, sorry.
That's like a
I'm
quarter
sorry to
of
be so
January
disrespectful.
Frodan. not new and upgraded July pick Frodan.
And there's also August on stream. Frodan.
It's getting close to unbearable.
Yeah, for Unid, I don't think a reborn minion is doing the job here. He needs a reborn hero.
Yeah, I don't even think coming back at 1 health would really help Unid at this point. It's a bit more dire than all that. As we, to be honest, as we expected, especially heading into game 1 for Unid before he can switch over to his stronger anti-control variant of the Rogue, DeadDraw just seems to have pretty easily removed every threat that Unid could play.
Right. There you go. DeadDraw takes a very convincing 1-0 lead, despite what looked like a better brawl than he needed to give Unid.
Yeah. And I think, it wasn't like, I'm not saying it was a blunder at all, it was just a difference in strategy, whereas we were thinking that maybe he could, eke out the brawl over time and then follow up with the Tomb Warden, whereas DeadDraw was clearly thinking, the rest of my hand's great, if I brawl, half the time I win anyway, and I'm pretty happy, and even if he loses, double Devastator as well as the Ziliax to follow up.
Right.
He was wrestling backboard, I think, pretty much every time.
I could have just been nitpicking between winning immediately and winning more, and you kind of get locked into that mindset sometimes when you play Control Warrior against so many mages over a field where it's very important to hold on to all your resources.
Yeah.
But it is very valid that when you're against a deck like Rogue, where oftentimes the matchup skews so heavily in one side's favor that you could end turn 3 times in a row and still win.
Yeah. I fully agree. And I think also that it's the difference between giving your opponent less time by using your resources more aggressively. Like, for example, when he went double Shield Slam and the Warpath to play the Pinata as well, it meant it was just a whole turn less for Unid because he was dying, which I think is worth it, even though you're expending more cards because they have less turns. So I think it was a pretty good play from DeadDraw, realizing that the aggressive potential was his strongest chance of taking the game.
And that means we will be switching to a different deck for Unid, I think. Let me just pull that up real quick, but generally if you're playing Rogue, you should have a game plan for Warrior, given that it was considered perhaps the second best deck to Mage going into this tournament, although I'm sure the tier list of classes will be swapped around after Seoul.
I'm sure it will. As that has historically been the way you go with Rogue. The way that you achieve an anti-warrior list has been argued over endlessly over Grandmasters, with some players going for Togwaggle scheme thrown in there, or just Togwaggle itself, Chef Nomi for some players, the mech package with Coppertail Imposters and Wargears for some players. There's a whole different bunch of avenues you can go down when it comes to anti-warrior. But when it comes to Saviors of Uldum, it's a little bit of a unexplored territory as to how you'd go about it.
So I'm taking a look at the secondary for Unid, and there's actually some spicy stuff at the bottom end there. Not just Chef Nomi, but the Black Knight, which is great against the taunt package from Warrior, and Arcane Dynamo.
Wow.
Which I'm not sure what that's hoping to pull outside of exactly Myra's Unstable Element, because what expensive spells does Rogue have left? Vanish and Sprint. Well, Vanish is gone. Sprint, I suppose, is kind of like Myra's.
Yeah. I guess so. I've got to be honest. I haven't seen Arcane Dynamo since it was played in like some kind of Shaman
right?
decks,
Yeah.
where you could hit pretty much exactly Bloodlust or Stormbringer every time. But it wasn't even particularly good in that, I would say. A bit of a weird card, but like you said, if you can hit Sprint or Myra's, you're in with a pretty good shot of being able to draw through to your more consistently good cards.
I think the game plan here makes sense from Unid. It just means that you're going for the Nomi game plan. The earlier you get that online with the double shadow steps, or even just one shadow step or none at all, you're just trying to deny the Warrior time to draw into their brawl. And, if one Nomi board sticks, that's often enough to take the whole game. So he needs to make sure that he draws into Nomi as soon as possible. And that means Arcane Dynamo. Yes, that is my leap in logic here, Tarek.
That was perfectly flawless logic, Dynamo right at the end. I see the reasoning. It's still a 6-mana 3/4, and we've seen that against Warrior nowadays. It's not the Control Warrior of old, where it's purely a bunch of removal and you have all the time in the world, and they're just tanking up time and time again. They have threats. They have a lot of threats. Warrior has some of the best mid-game options in the game at the moment, with the form of Restless Mummy, Dynamatic, Snip Snap, the Devastator there as well. It makes it so you have to play nice and quick, and a 6-mana 3/4 may just not be quick enough for you.
Speaking of Mummy, it does provide a full board clear here. Every time I see this card, I just roll my eyes again at how insane it is.
Yeah.
He even maintains a 1/1 on the board. Yeah, I assume it's worth killing off the Miscreant.
Yeah, I think so. Were you thinking of taking the value trade and leaving your
No.
Reborn a minion?
I was just wondering because DeadDraw had a bit of hesitation between playing the Mummy and then going for it, but no harm in taking all the time to really confirm whether this is the best play.
Of course.
So another Miscreant here seems just like the logical choice. Challenges the 1/1, although it's probably trading into the 2/1.
Seems very reasonable so far from Unid. It's like, it's a little bit low tempo in the mid game, but pretty much everything he did there would be dying to Dynamatic anyway.
Right.
As you know, this still does with a quick trade in, which is kind of unfortunate, right? I think on average he could expect a board that probably wouldn't die to Dynamatic and would leave the 1/4 alive.
Well, the question is this a good enough Dynamatic? And I'm inclined to say no. I feel like the 2
wow, really?
damage on board doesn't really justify using one of his best removal options. I wouldn't be
It's more
opposed
just
to
that it gets the minion in play, right? Like a 3/4 body's good, especially for Snip Snap next turn. Double Snip Snap and being magnetized on.
I just feel like against Rogue, it's really hard to guarantee that you stick a 4 health minion.
Yeah.
Waggle picks, Vendetta. I wasn't opposed to just taking it slow, maybe go for Acolyte there. Granted, that leaves the possibility that the next board from Uni doesn't then die to Dynamatic, but he was still sitting on a Brawl and a second Mummy. So
I'm addicted to spending all my mana on curve.
Sure.
I can't help
I
it.
mean, that is the best feeling in Hearthstone, and therefore Quest Druid is an abomination.
I can't do it, dude. Every time I float a mana, it hurts me a little bit.
So for Unit here, he doesn't actually have access to Vendetta or Waggle pick, so it's not entirely awkward to deal with the Dynamatic, but I think the outcome for DeadDraw did work out in his favor for here.
And while Galvanizer is obviously not the ideal minion to be summoned there of the Faceless Lackey, it's a mech to get the initial attack going through from Snip Snap with a double Snip Snap next turn, which is an extra 4 damage, not bad at all.
So the board for DeadDraw, like, this kind of looks like a Mummy turn, but it doesn't feel amazing, honestly, because the Mummy only removes 4 damage. I mean, this is a board I'd much rather Dynamatic, if that makes sense. Although we wouldn't have had this board state if the initial Dynamatic wasn't played. But it's really tough to parcel out your resources as Warrior here. I wouldn't hate just seeing 2 unattached Snip Snaps here.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It's either that or like Restless Mummy, and then would you value trade the Galvanizer or double trade it in? It just feels a lot worse than...
It really does. And between Rogue just dealing 1 damage and trading in the Lackey to the Mummy, it's pretty likely that the Underbelly would then stick, and then it becomes a problem for the Warrior.
This is much stickier.
Snippier, too. And snappier.
It is much snappier. It gets a lot more pressure onto the board right away.
Snip Snaps for everyone is the name of the game here. You need... It's funny, he actually has more value in hand than the Warrior. Haven't seen that in a while. But that can happen when the Rogue is running the full Burgle package, and we haven't even gotten to the Dynamo yet.
Yeah, that's true actually. But I don't know, it always felt like that was the way in the old school Burgle Rogue versus Bomb or Control Warrior matchups, is that they had way more value, or more stuff in hand at least, but the removal from Warrior just takes out so much of their value in one fell swoop. Like Brawl and Super Collider will easily deal with 2 or 3 cards each from the Rogue.
And that was definitely a better spot to go for the Restless Mummy, where it can trade up and remove a tall minion, and DeadDraw finds still a good board state for the Acolyte to come down. I'm liking the... Oh, okay. Pickpocket was my first like inclination just because of all the value, but there's Leroy and Shadowstep already in hand, so let's do that. The Warrior doesn't actually even have any armor right now.
Yeah, Shadow Step looking like by far the most flexible, because you can even go for a lot of like one-turn surprise lethals with Kobold double step or something like that for cheap, small amounts of damage,
The
which I
most
like a lot.
the most you can do in one turn would then be Leroy Step Leroy, which is 8, and then Kobold Step Kobold, which is uh, another 1 mana. So 9 mana to deal 16, which is quite a lot. Instead, he's going to use the step on the Ethereal Lackey, though.
Which I find quite surprising.
Mhm.
I think that, you know, turning Shadow Step into what is basically 0 mana discover a card, discover a spell for Rogue is, I don't think a trade I would make at the moment. Like, Shadow Step's just a good card here. He has value in the form of double Burglar.
And also, he wasn't necessarily locked into going for 1 turn of 16. He could do the Leroy over 2 turns,
Right,
18
exactly,
over 2 turns. And yeah, it's a little bit curious.
And again, it's not like he needs the Lackey for Togwaggle. He doesn't even have it in the deck. Maybe it's for the top deck history buff, for an extra buff on his Leroy.
There you go. So Eternium Rover and actually Super Collider is the player here. I was looking at the Warpath, which would have been awkward because he was 1 mana short of clearing everything and playing the Rover. So he's just gonna preemptively equip this setup for Warpath next turn. Can we do crazy things with the goop?
Whoa.
I mean, I'm looking at a lot of like.
Is that just insane?
If we had the other Shadow Step and we could play 3 Leroy this turn,
Well, you can gain in 4 mana, right, by trading in all your guys. Granted, it gives 6 armor.
True.
To the warrior.
Kind of cancels out a Leroy, but it was flashy. So maybe Penance was just the bread and butter pick there.
Yeah, I guess. And especially as the thing is, like, the benefit that you gain by having more mana is you get to commit more to the board.
Right.
Which isn't even that good necessarily because you
you
obviously just get killed by Brawl then.
Unide's only card in hand that he necessarily wants more mana to stack on top of a turn is the Henchclan Burglar. The rest is stuff that it's okay if you don't play it at the same turn.
I agree.
So Warpath Dynomatic is a clear. Also just, you know, complete Warpath. But then you don't get to develop a minion on top of that.
There's not any way that he can go for a Dynomatic clear with just a swing of the Super Collider. Unless, of course, he hits all 3 1/1s in the middle with the Dynomatic.
Honestly, not entirely unlikely.
It's not ridiculous, but I think this is reasonable.
It's the safest way to go about it.
And again, we've seen the merit of getting these minions in play, right? Like a 3/4 on board is, I was going to say it's worth 2 in the hand, but that's complete nonsense.
Oh, there's the other Shadow Step. So this is 18 over 2 turns plus the Lackey, 20. It's just a little bit short, but that could easily come off of the Ethereal Lackey. I think you take the Violet Haze just to have some minion development this turn.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what his overall game plan is, because we could obviously see the sap and then just say, you know, if Ziliax comes down and magnetizes on you, then have an answer for it. Oh, he already has the sap in hand, right? So he already has it.
Wow, Espionage. Oh, Unide is next level memeing.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I was not expecting that as the pick, especially as it kind of dilutes your deck.
The bite seems good to just chuck face right now. That's what I'd like to see.
Yep, 4 damage. I think that's definitely the way to
But
go.
I'm really not a fan of the Espionage, despite how much I've been pushing memes. I feel like maybe Unide could be locked into this mindset that he's playing this Nomi package, which is trying to go for the late game. But I see an avenue to go for the throat as early as now. And with the Violet Haze, he would have had 7 mana remaining, and just any Death Rattle minion, honestly, not any, but a good amount of them could have provided a sticky board presence, something maybe even more threatening than this, that could provide the additional damage needed to just go for lethal with Leroy.
Yeah, they were. That was a pretty staggeringly bad selection to be getting there. I kind of can't believe that there wasn't a single good damage or even just like tempo spell. Yeah, I think I agree with you, because the thing is, like, if he goes for the plan with Nomi at the moment, he's still probably winning. He doesn't need the extra shuffle on top of that.
Yeah.
And if he goes for Espionage before, that's just diluting his deck.
Exactly.
It's less likely to get the Nomi.
Yeah, Espionage is only a good card when you have guaranteed card draw in hand already. So if Amara were in hand already, or say a discovered sprint off of Arcane Dynamo, that could be really fun. But yeah, now he's locked himself into, I guess, still a 2-turn lethal setup. by holding onto the bite. He just goes bite, Leroy, Shadow Step, and then next turn, Leroy, Shadow Step, Leroy. So that's 22 plus the 2 dagger hits. It's 24. But of course, the warrior has armor and can continue gaining, so still Ziliax available to DeadDraw. And with the security rover hitting the board, taunts are potentially going to cause trouble.
I like the security rover play here from DeadDraw. Like, using the tempo straight away of the shield slam makes the potential for sap a lot less devastating, because if it does come down, there's only 2 damage hitting face.
I really think Unid could have found a way to get this Leroy onto the board earlier on. Obviously, you want to have it as late as possible so that you're not giving your opponent the upside of the whelps, but it does take 2 turns to play 3 Leroys, so maybe there's a way to set this up a little bit better.
This now means that with Leroy Step, Leroy Bite, that's what, 12, 16, 17 damage available?
So here's a thought. We can Shadow Step this Kobold Lackey, which removes a Ziliax target. And
good point.
He would still have then Leroy Bite and then the Lackey. I guess it's a little bit short in that case, so might as well invest the mana now.
Yeah, I think the thing is, even if just Ziliax comes down on its own, the effect is still done, right? Like, it doesn't have to charge into anything because he doesn't have another sap.
Right. So Ziliax with the Replicating Menace would heal for 6. And I think that looks like the play. So you probably just start with the Town Crier anyway. I'm not even sure if it draws anything by this point. I think both Mummies and Ziliax were played. Yep. Yeah. So, wow. I like... Oh, that's magnetic too. That's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
This way just means you're less vulnerable to a sap, which I think is very smart.
Right. It is correct. A small optimization. Good indication of matchup knowledge from DeadDraw, or just deck knowledge. Yeah.
And now with DeadDraw getting up to a very reasonable health total, you need with no way to remove the Ziliax without giving the heal. This might just be slipping away from him.
Indeed. What is this espionage doing, Daruk?
There aren't even any good warrior draw spells, right, that you could get off the top. Like, even Battle Rage just doesn't really get the job done.
Shield block, nah.
Even then, it's the same as just having not done it, right?
Right, right.
You just cycle over the card that you put in your deck. Oh, the sight that every aggro player absolutely detests to see. Leroy into a Ziliax.
Physically cringing at that. Also, why not use the Bite over the Leroy is my question. Leroy represents more damage.
That's not a thing. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I guess.
Better mana utilization in case he gets
Myra's
off the top.
It really...
Which is not ridiculous, right? Because you have to play to the perfect out.
Right. At this point, he really does need Myra just to stay in the game. And even if he does get it, there's quite a lot of pressure coming forward from DeadDraw.
Yeah. He's only got 1, maybe 2 turns to get there.
That's not... Oh, if that sap had been in the hand for the Ziliax, something else could have happened. So,
or imagine if he picked it instead of the espionage.
And, you know, I'm still standing by my Violet Haze. Maybe it wasn't as good as sap necessarily for this exact situation, but he could have had just more minion threats to stick.
I'm saying I was objectively correct in saying you should go for the sap.
And I'm going to say you are objectively not being objective.
You've objectively hurt my feelings.
As I so often do. Not quite as badly as TJ does, but...
That's not humanly possible.
So that's going to be it. I think DeadDraw takes a very solid 2-0 victory here. Maybe not next turn because we can gain armor with Bite.
Yeah, and he can sap the drill, but yeah. It's only just delaying the inevitable, I think, at this point. Even with Myra's onto the off the top. Well, I guess Myra's into the absolute god draw 1-mana warrior cards, right? There's some chance.
All right, so what can we get?
There's some chance.
Dr. Boom at Genius.
Dr. Boom into like 4 Devastators or something that will just rush in and blow up the board.
How about Dr. Boom Bad Genius into Clockwork Goblin, Clockwork Goblin, Clockwork Goblin, Blastmaster Boom, and then the bombs rush because you play Boom Bad Genius.
Well, it's possible.
It is.
It is possible.
I would love to see the Myras.
I'm going to go out and go on and do some quick napkin maths here. Unlikely, I'm going to say, but still possible.
Is that objectively unlikely,
Objectively unlikely,
Derek?
I'm going
Hey, the Black Knight.
He can get some value from it here if he wants with a trade into the security rover.
That's right.
But I think he's going to realize it's over. You need, unfortunately for him, will drop down to the lower bracket in Division B. But DeadDraw sailing on to prime position in his division. 1 game away now from getting through to the top 4 tomorrow.
That is right, and I believe that means that both of the Warriors in top 8 won their initial matches. We had a Mage Mirror, so definitely a Mage makes it through, and the Priest fell. So
Yes.
I think Warriors showing their dominance, mostly because the Mages faced off against each other. Maybe that's a little bit fortunate for how the Warriors were seated in the bracket.
I mean, the Warriors got the dream matchups, right? The Priest is terrible against the Warrior. The Rogue is terrible against the Warrior. It was a little bit fortunate for the Warriors, which, you know, is not irrelevant because even if they just get up to top 4, that's already a big jump in prize money compared to top 8. And also just saying that you were able to top 4 a Masters Tour event, it gets you that little bit closer to maybe qualifying for Grandmasters as well.
I mean, I've been told that top 2ing a Masters Tour can actually get you to be a Grandmaster.
It can just straight up get you there if the person in front of you proceeds to drop out of Grandmasters.
All right, so a summary of what has gone on over the initial matches. We saw RNG Liss, Chinese representative, taking a 2-1 victory over Sunni's Combo Priest with Reno Hunter, and Staz, the other Reno Hunter player, falling to Magoho, who was playing that hybrid bomb control warrior version. And the inclusion of the bombs really hurt Staz there by disrupting the Reno and Zephyrus effect. Sorry, Bran effect.
Yes.
But we will get to see Sunni versus Staz in the elimination. And honestly, this one hurts my heart because obviously Staz is my teammate, but I did call Sunni to perform really well and possibly even win Seoul yesterday because I was so impressed and continue to be impressed with his combo priest play.
Big time. And, you know, I'd like to see a Korean representative carry on. Only having 1 South Korean left in the top 8 is, you know, a little bit of a disappointment, I think, for all the fans who are going to turn up tomorrow when we open up the arena to the public to come and view the spectacle that is the final day of Masters Tour Seoul. There should be an interesting matchup. I think the Combo Priest versus Reno Hunter feels like a little bit of a closer one than compared to the Warrior, where there's a little bit of back and forth. But RNG Liss on the other side, I think he's kind of become the real standout player in that I believe he's only lost 1 match so far here in Masters Tour Seoul, which is pretty absurd when you consider the caliber of player that went 0-3, 1-3, like pretty terrible scores for some of the best players out there.
It is incredibly impressive, and also good to see a showing from China despite, you know, not having that much access to all of the global tournaments because they have their own pretty closed off scene there, but a very vibrant one. So showing us that they're a force to be reckoned with. And over in bracket B, we've got Felkind and DeadDraw as the winners. So Felkind did win a mirror against his buddy Zim there, who brought the exact same lineup with the Reno Mage, and then DeadDraw we did see take honestly very one-sided games against Unit's Rogue.
And this is a matchup I'm very excited to see at the top between DeadDraw and Felkind, because DeadDraw had a very, very nice run through the Swiss, and I'd have to imagine with about 40% of the decks being mage here, he's going to have to have run into some of them along the way, and his warrior must have been beating them if he got such a good score as he did through the Swiss record, which I'd be excited to see how he did that, because I would say Reno Mage now has enough threats, enough tempo in the mid game when you factor in the Luna's Pocket Galaxy, that Warrior would struggle to find all the removal.
And over at the elimination match, we saw that Unid versus Zim is going to be the match, and that's going to be a tough one for Zim, and Unid probably happy to see that he is still hitting the mages well into the top 8 as well. And in that case, though, there's still a chance that he might have a rematch against Warrior, or if the mage takes what we predict to be a win, Unid is actually in a good spot, I would say, how the way the bracket shakes up.
Yeah.
And we are going to see how that pans out tomorrow. So thank you everybody who tuned in today at the second day of Hearthstone Masters Tour Seoul. Tomorrow we will be live again at 10 a.m. KST. Go translate that to European time, Derek.
2 in the morning, I think, for England, so 3 in the morning for Europe.
For the top 8 matches at the OGN Stadium with a live audience. It's going to be hype. I'm really excited every time I cast in Korea. It's been great when we have a live audience. The energy is just something else. Any last words, Derek?
Yeah, it's going to be the first time for me casting in front of a live audience in Korea, and I cannot wait to see the passion that this country does have for esports. I'm very excited.
All right. So one last time, thank you everybody who tuned in, from me, Gia, from Derek, from Kibler, and from Frodan. We'll see you guys tomorrow.